What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Very Cold Lasagna, the podcast that houses a safe and open listening platform for casual, cold, and even the dumbest takes on the world of pro wrestling, football, and all sports in general. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna. Welcome to today's episode number 89 of this freezing cold podcast that houses the very cold, yet spicy as hell, lasagna. Welcome to today's show, and man, we forgot to talk about one game that was on Championship Sunday, and that was the AFC Championship Game. We can't talk about one game without mentioning the other, and that was who was going to represent the American Football Conference. It's Super Bowl 56, and that was going to be either the Cincinnati Bengals or the Kansas City Chiefs, and that happened also on Championship Sunday. So, I mean, obviously, we have to talk about my 49ers first, because it's my team, even though they lost in the title game on Sunday night. But we are here a couple days very well out of date to talk about this AFC title game that kicked off Championship Sunday. And man, what a game this was. You know, you had two young quarterbacks going up against one another to, I guess you could call it David and Goliath. Joe Burrow going to Arrowhead Stadium to lead his Cincinnati Bengals to take on, I guess you could call the King of Kings of the AFC in Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. It was going to be a slobber knocker, as Jim Ross would love to say it, if you follow professional wrestling. Hell yeah, this was going to be a drag-out heavyweight fight between these two teams. And this was also a rematch of their Week 17 meeting in Cincinnati, where the Bengals won 34-31, where, you know, the Bengals managed to complete their comeback. They were down 28-17 at one point, and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they absolutely exploded in the second half to beat the Chiefs, and that was the victory that helped them clinch the AFC North Division title in Week 17. So this is a big matchup for both of these teams. This is a big rematch. This time it's happening in Kansas City to determine who would represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. So here we are. Both of these teams made it to this point. Both of them obviously want to go to the Super Bowl. So who's going to do it? You know, looking at Cincinnati's playoff run so far, it's been, you know, kind of a mixed bag. You know, it's been a mixed bag because at 10-7, you know, they're the 4th seed in the AFC playoffs, but they have clearly exceeded expectations. With big breakouts from the second-year quarterback Joe Burrow. I think he's going to be comeback player of the year, and then the offensive rookie of the year candidate Jamar Chase. Both of them having very strong campaigns, and also having a strong supporting cast that consists of receivers T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, and tight end CJ Uzama, and having a good running back in Joe Mixon. So this offense is very strong, and they began their playoff push at home against the Las Vegas Raiders in the wild card, and you know they were doing pretty well for themselves in that game, but they slowed down in the second half. But they managed to hold off the Vegas Raiders. The linebacker Jermaine Pratt got an interception on Derek Carr near the goal line, and held them off 26-19 to go on to the divisional playoffs. And this was their first playoff victory since 1990, and ended what initially was the longest drought in NFL history without a playoff victory. So that drought now belongs to the Detroit Lions. So Detroit, you got some explaining to do there. So for Cincinnati, their playoff journey continues on the road. They're going to Tennessee to take on the well-rested, top-seed Tennessee Titans. They were getting Derrick Henry back, and I think a couple other players. But the most important piece was Derrick Henry, getting him back on offense. But unfortunately, not even the return of the King was enough for the Titans to overcome their offensive struggles. But this was an overall offensive struggle for this game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Tennessee Titans, because you saw Joe Burrow take 9 sacks, a ass kicking, because his offensive line couldn't protect him. Burrow took 9 sacks from a relentless Tennessee pass rush, and Ryan Tannehill absolutely played an awful game. And the cherry on top was 3 interceptions, including the third one that gave Cincinnati the last dance in this game, because Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase got a big play in to get into their kicker, Evan McPherson's range, to kick a long field goal to upset the top seed 19-16. So these Bengals, getting out the gutsy wins. And this one was a big one too, because in spite of those 9 sacks on Joe Burrow, they still managed to get out a win and move on to their first AFC Championship in over 30 years. So initially written off as basement dwellers in the preseason by the media, the sports media, look at them now. Look at them now heading into that AFC title game. Nobody expected them to be there. Everyone expected the Kansas City Chiefs. Everyone expected the LA Chargers, or who God knows which other team. It's the Cincinnati Bengals in the AFC Championship game with the recently recovered Joe Burrow at the time, coming off the ACL tear from 2020. Like, holy shit. Meanwhile, for the Kansas City Chiefs, they're entering this. They were entering this matchup as the 2 seed. And, they had questions of their own. Could they keep up that red hot momentum that they had towards the end of the season and at the midway point? They struggled early in the season. They were still trying to shake off that notion of the Super Bowl losers curse. But the offense was clearly struggling with Patrick Mahomes, and Mahomes himself was struggling and making some really wacky throws that he normally doesn't make. But midway through the season, they get back to somewhat normal, and the defense actually plays much better than what they were early in the season, where they're just giving up many, many points and allowing a lot of big plays. So their reward for their second half resurgence was a 12-5 record, winning the AFC West and the 2 seed in the playoffs. I mean, sure, they have to play in the first round, but it proved to be no problem for Kansas City, because they got to face the washed-ass Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round. But they had to overcome a slow start to even get to that point, because after that slow start, they managed to output a total ass-kicking on Big Ben Roethlisberger and the rest of the Steelers, and putting Big Ben into retirement 42-21. So that Steelers matchup, it only served as the appetizer. It only served as I guess you could call the first meal for what was to come in the next round. A matchup with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in the divisionals, in the AFC divisional. A rematch of the 2020 AFC Championship game now comes to a head in the divisional playoffs. In that game, Mahomes and Josh Allen dueled to the playoff death in the second half. Josh Allen was going batshit crazy in that game. Like, the Chiefs had no answer for Josh Allen and Gabriel Davis, but Patrick Mahomes, when it came to nut busting time with 13 seconds on the line, he managed to get past that Kansas City defense, find Travis Kelce in stride, and Harrison Butker sent the game to overtime. And sadly, and I guess a kind of a role reversal of the 2018 AFC Championship game, Patrick Mahomes actually got the strike first and only first, because that's when he managed to slice and dice, expose that top-ranked Bills defense in overtime, and outlast the Bills 42-36 in overtime. So for Kansas City, it looked like that offense was unstoppable, and it was going to be the thing that carried them to a third straight Super Bowl. And heading to this game into Cincinnati, coming off that 9-sack letdown, sure, they won, but they allowed 9 sacks on Joe Burrow. And there's a part of me that wondered if there was any reason to believe in them, if there was any reason for not to believe that Kansas City is gonna be the odds-on favorite to win this title game and to go on to win. Is there anyone to stop Kansas City? That it's just pretty much what I'm saying. So some of the biggest things that I was keeping an eye on was this matchup between Joe Burrow, who, sure, he's got some playoff experience heading into into these heading into this AFC title game. He had that wild card game against the Raiders, and then that divisional game against the Tennessee Titans. But this was the big game. This was the big title game against a more seasoned Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has been to 4 straight AFC title games, and won 2 of them. He has won 2 straight of them, and he's looking to get that 3rd straight and at home. So this was still kind of an inexperienced Joe Burrow. He's only played, like, the biggest game that he's played in his life was the national championship game back in, what was it, 2020, 2019? I forgot. But it is the national title game where Louisiana State won. Was it Louisiana State? LSU won that national championship against Alabama. So it was going to be a tall task for Joe Burrow to lead this underdog Cincinnati Bengals to a victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. And so you can have that offensive line that I keep talking about. They had to have a better game. They had to better protect Joe Burrow against the Kansas City pass rush of Melvin Ingram, Frank Clark, Chris Jones. That big 3 in the defensive front. They, against Cincinnati's weak offensive line, oof, man, that's going to be a rough day. So I initially picked the Kansas City Chiefs because, even though both teams have strong offenses and it had the potential for a shootout, just like in the divisional round with the Bills and the Chiefs, the biggest key for this game was going to be Cincinnati's offensive line and whether or not they were going to be able to bounce back from that horrendous outing against the Tennessee Titans in the divisional playoffs. And the whole thing is, were they going to be able to hold up? Were they going to be able to keep that defensive front of Clark, Jones, and Ingram in check for most of the game, or if not all of the game? So if they were, then Burrow would have plenty of opportunities to make some plays, short, big, deep, long. However, to compete toe-to-toe against Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, for Kansas City, it knew what it had to do to beat Cincinnati and get its revenge from Week 17. They had to continually score with Mahomes and every chance they got. But that defense, they need to lock down. They need to clamp up, especially in the secondary. They need to shadow Jamar Chase. They need to go one-on-one with Higgins and Boyd and Uzama. So it was also a tough task for that Kansas City defense in Week 17. It was also certainly going to be a tall task in this game as well. So that said, I still picked Kansas City to win this game because it was the offensive line advantage for Kansas City over Cincinnati's. So we actually get to the game with the AFC title game with Kansas City and Cincinnati. And early on, it looked like this game was going to be a total smashing, but by Kansas City, because after Cincinnati quickly goes 3-and-out, the Chiefs, they strike first. They immediately strike first. They attacked the Bengals with Jerick McKinnon, and as he went through that run defense of the Cincinnati Bengals, and the passing game of the Kansas City Chiefs, it was just completely demolishing the Bengals defense. Especially, they were picking on the corner, Eli Apple. He was having a really hard time covering the likes of McKinnon, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill. And I think it was on the opening touchdown where Eli Apple was his assignment was Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill caught the ball, and Eli Apple was literally 6 feet away, like he was social distancing from Tyreek, and he just let him pass him by. So Tyreek can get the opening touchdown, 7-0 right away from the gate. So another unsuccessful drive for Cincinnati, and I say unsuccessful because they couldn't score. They couldn't score an actual touchdown. I mean, sure, they had their own success with the running game with Joe Mixon on their way to the red zone, but they had 3 straight incompletions inside the Chiefs' 10-yard line. And after that, they had to settle for 3. So that's not what you need. That is not what you need to go toe to toe to try to beat Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead. You gotta take your chances. You gotta take what you can get with a 4th and goal nut busting touchdown in that situation. And that decision to just get 3 points, it seemed initially to prove them costly, because immediately, they get 2 big passes to McCole Hardman and Jerick McKinnon, and then Travis Kelce gets a touchdown, and it's already 14-3 at the start of the second quarter, and we're just thinking, yikes, this could be a blowout city really quick. It's the Cincinnati defense doesn't do anything. They weren't getting anything with the pass rush. I don't know if it was the offensive line of Kansas City neutralizing them, but if it was that, then whoever their defensive coordinator was, they had to figure out something quick to try to make something happen, do something on the outside or create some interior pressure for Mahomes. The touchdown to Travis Kelce stood out to me a lot when rewatching it, the highlights, because Cincinnati on that touchdown drive, they allowed Patrick Mahomes to run around like he was playing tag with the Cincinnati defense for almost 10 seconds. Oh my God, how are they not able to tackle this dude? How are they not able to sandwich him? Because he was running around 10 seconds, oh, you can't tag me, I'm not it. And he gets the ball to Travis Kelce out of nowhere. So inexcusable stuff already from Cincinnati, as they were already behind 14-3, and then once they get a 3 and out, things aren't looking good for the Bengals, because even worse, the Chiefs continue to hammer. They can bring the smash hammer onto the Bengals' soft defensive coverage. Clyde Edwards-Helaire continues to attack on the ground. Travis Kelce in the air, and then McCole Hardman gets a touchdown from Patrick Mahomes. I don't know how many yards out, but it's well wide open. And then all of a sudden, 21-3 with the midway point of the second quarter. And at this point, when I was watching this, it was really looking like the Chiefs were just gonna get that final smash ball already and perform whatever their final smash is with Mahomes in the offense, and just completely trash the Bengals for the next 30 minutes plus on their way to the Super Bowl. So it seemed that way. But Joe Burrow, they finally caught a break. He does a little short pass to Samaje Perine, their backup running back, and he turns that short play into a long play. Okay, 21-10. He managed to get that short, long play into a touchdown. So it's 21-10. Kansas City has a minute left to make something into something on the final series before the half. And that Cincy defense, they couldn't limit Patrick Mahomes in that offense because, they got right back to the goal line. But here's where things get really interesting. And this is one of the things that I think honestly got Cincinnati back into the game. Andy Reid called 2 passes at the goal line. Are you Pete Carroll? Did you go to the Pete Carroll school of choking for a day back in 2015? Because if my mind serves correctly, you have 2 running backs that have just been gashing Cincinnati's defense, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon. So what was the problem with running down the middle or slightly on the edge, slightly on the left or the right corners in the 1 yard line? Literally at the goal line. They were at the goal line, yet they decided to throw the ball 2 straight times. I don't understand. What was the idea of doing this when you were up by 11 points? I don't get it. And all it did was make you leave empty-handed, because on the final play of the half, Patrick Mahomes tries to sling it out to Tyreek Hill, and Hill tried to waltz his way into the touchdown, or at least dive for the pylon, but Eli Apple, the often bullied corner of the day on Sunday. He made this clutch tackle like well inches of the goal line and stopped Tyreek from getting a touchdown, and it remained 21-10 going to halftime. So, it seemed like for most of the first half, Cincinnati's storybook run was going to have that brutal ending with Kansas City grabbing that smash ball, performing their final smash of being AFC champions. Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey, Jerick McKinnon, McCole Hardman, and that entire offense as a whole were just having their way. They were just like completely on fire against a secondary that I think they were respecting their assignments a little bit too much. They were social distancing a little too much. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati offense just couldn't get anything going, despite that touchdown for Samaje Perine. But for Cincy, they did prevent themselves from being put in a further hole at the end of the half with that tackle by Eli Apple. But man, they need to make some significant adjustments going to the second half if they want to make a comeback, an 11-point comeback against Kansas City. So what's it gonna happen? We'll find out. Then we get to the third quarter, and this is where the tide would change. The Bengals defense, they finally force the Chiefs to punt, but the offense can't do anything with it, so they have to punt again. But then Cincinnati again forcing a 3-and-out, 2 straight 3-and-outs on Patrick Mahomes in the offense, and clearly if you force two straight 3-and-outs when the Kansas City offense was scoring touchdown after touchdown in the first half, clearly whatever you did, whoever the defensive coordinator did and what he did to do this, whatever adjustments he made to make this happen, it's something. It's certainly something, because it's clearly working. Because by that point, Mahomes really looked out of sorts. I think he was trying to do a little too much for no reason whatsoever. He was overthrowing his receivers, trying to force the ball into very tight coverages, and it just wasn't working. It really wasn't working. So the second straight 3-and-out finally woke up the offense a little bit. And sure, they only got 3 points, but even at 21-13, it was clear that the Bengals were slowly starting to heat up a little. They were trying to get their get going, and they definitely got it on the next series, because BJ Hill intercepted Patrick Mahomes with Mahomes under duress from the Bengals pass rush, and all of a sudden Joe Burrow leads the offense on a quick touchdown drive with Jamar Chase getting the touchdown, and Trent Taylor, the former 49ers receiver, now on the Bengals, successfully netting the 2-point conversion from Joe Burrow. And all of a sudden, it's 21-all, just like that. Holy shit. Cincinnati clearly had all the momentum on Kansas City, who was on a downward trend. And going into the fourth quarter, when Mahomes took a sack to start the fourth quarter, the Chiefs offense, that sack was just an indication that this offense had completely gone ice cold in the fridge. Throughout this fourth quarter, both teams, it was just pretty much a defensive battle. Burrow throws a bad pick, but Mahomes gets sacked yet again, and they have to punt. And then after that, both of these teams went on long drives. Joe Burrow takes this team on a long drive, gained some nice passes in, using the running game of Joe Mixon. But they want to try to score, but the Kansas City defense keeps them out of their tracks. They'll settle for a field goal. They take the lead 24-21, but now they had to play 6 minutes of defense to close things out. So the Chiefs managed to get to the Bengals 5-yard line with pretty much 5 minutes left on the clock. Not 5 minutes left on the clock, using 5 minutes. And they were in prime position. They were well in prime position to essentially put the Bengals away with just a touchdown because, I mean, you got Mahomes, you got Kelsey. They have like a lot of trickery they can use. But man, Cincinnati was up to the task. They had a good stand in near the goal line. So they dialed up the pressure on 2 straight plays, sacking Mahomes once and then strip sacking, like chasing him all around backwards. They pushed him, like, I think well all the way back near the 30-yard line, and strip sacked Mahomes, even though the one of the Kansas City offensive linemen recovered it, but it it allowed Cincinnati to pin them in a situation where they have to force overtime. Like, they're not going for like a game-winning touchdown. Like, you want to take this to overtime? Okay, we'll kick your ass there. So Harrison Butker kicks the game time field goal, and there we are, overtime. So the Bengals all of a sudden have this momentum with them. The Kansas City Chiefs, ice cold as hell. And that last sequence of events, that defense has really stepped up. Because they really brought the heat on Mahomes on the strip sack play, and they forced Kansas City to burn all that clock, send that thing to overtime. This Bengals defense, really a second half team right here. So we go to overtime, and then Kansas City won the opening coin toss. And, you know, most of us were quick to think and some quick to worry because, you know, just like last week, you know, it meant good luck for the Kansas City Chiefs to win it on their first possession, because, you know, in that duel with Josh Allen and Mahomes, it was a reverse of the 2018 AFC Championship game with Patrick Mahomes. He never got the ball against Tom Brady, and Josh Allen never got the ball against Patrick Mahomes. So here we go again with Joe Burrow. But unfortunately for Mahomes, his fortune would change along with the rest of the Kansas City Chiefs, because Mahomes was not good at all in this first overtime drive, first and only overtime drive, by the way, because he would throw a very bad interception, a near interception to Eli Apple, who, had he caught it, would have waltzed in to the end zone for a game-winning pick six. But then Mahomes, on the very next play, throws a wide big pass to Tyreek Hill that deflects off his chest, and then it lands in the arms of the safety, Von Bell. And after Von Bell returns it for 10 plus yards, that essentially gave Cincinnati a gift-wrapped ticket to the Super Bowl, because all they had to do was run it. And they had to just protect the ball and run it to McPherson's closest field goal range. So that's exactly what they did. They utilized Joe Mixon, the running back, and they absolutely milked every single moment. They wanted to make Kansas City look like bitches during that last overtime possession, because the Bengals, you know, slowly, methodically, and, you know, they marched their way as close as possible, and, you know, doing like whatever they want to for themselves and against Kansas City's will. Like, even at a certain point, Kansas City fans were booing the shit out of Cincinnati for just milking it. And hey, can you blame Cincinnati? So anyway, you know, Evan McPherson, after like 5 minutes of milking it with ice in his veins, puts the ball into the uprights. And Cincinnati, congratulations. You are in the Super Bowl for the first time in over 30 years. You are going to Los Angeles to play in Super Bowl 56, as the Bengals beat the Chiefs on Sunday in an upset 27-24. Man, what a game that was. What a game that was by this Bengals squad. They went up to Arrowhead, faced the King of Kings in the Kansas City Chiefs, and, you know, they overcame the odds. They really overcame the odds. That first half seemed like they were already headed towards the offseason. You know, they allowed 3 straight touchdowns to that Kansas City offense. So, it kind of looked like the theme of the day. They were going to get smashed. They were going to get Super Smash Bros. By Patrick Mahomes in that offense. But they made some defensive adjustments. I don't know what the fuck they were. I mean, I'm just filthy casual. But, I mean, I guess you could say they decided to create some outside pressure to keep Mahomes in the pocket. And that forced him to make some, like, untimely throws. And, meanwhile on offense, Joe Burrow led some nice collective drives and made some good throws to get the Bengals in scoring positions. But the stars of the game were the defense, because they really put Mahomes out of whack. They made him play probably one of his worst halves of football in his young career. So all in all, this is a really great win for a Bengals team that's relatively young. They were the worst team in football just 2 years ago. And here they are now, 2 years later, in the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, for the Chiefs, man, this was very disappointing for them. I mean, good for me, I guess, since I'm a Niners fan and I don't get to see the Chiefs again in the Super Bowl, but then the Niners aren't in it. But either way, this was a total meltdown by the entire team. I mean, the defense couldn't stop Joe Burrow. They had no answers for him in the second half. But the offense, that was just awful. That was just an awful performance in the second half. They choked. They absolutely choked it up in the second half. Like, Patrick Mahomes was just, he had a very, very weird performance in the second half. He was just like flying balls over his receivers' heads, or he was just throwing a weird interception to BJ Hill, or just try to do something too much with that overtime interception to when he tried to throw it to Tyreek Hill in double coverage, and then it bounced off of him to Von Bell. It's like, damn, he really tried to play hero ball so much with the rest of his team suddenly struggling and him struggling, trying to like get out of that funk, and Andy Reid didn't even help him out. So overall, a very disappointing performance by this Kansas City team, especially in that second half. So now they're going into an offseason contemplating, what if they finish the job? What if they continue to keep their foot on the gas pedal? What if they didn't? What if they didn't call that play at the end of the first half, having Mahomes throw it to Tyreek Hill at the goal line? What if they just ran it in to score and it'd be 28-10 going to half? It's kind of like those things that they're going to be thinking about going into this offseason and heading into the 2022 season in fall. So speaking of their offseason, it's kind of an important one for Kansas City, because their general manager, Brett Veach, has some important decisions to make. He has to decide who to resign, who they have to let walk, which contracts to restructure. It's something that they have to keep in mind, because they only have $14 million in cap space. I mean, it's a certain that they're gonna have to cut some certain players if they want to keep some of their biggest names around to try to win another championship. The three biggest names that come to mind for me are Tyrann Mathieu, their strong safety, Melvin Ingram, the defensive end that they traded this past season from the Steelers, and left tackle Orlando Brown, who they traded last year from the Baltimore Ravens. So a lot of decisions that Kansas City has to make, but I think the biggest one has to be, can they re-sign all three of those guys that I mentioned, if not at least one or two of them? So this is still a competitive team. I mean, sure, disappointing loss for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but this is still going to be a playoff team for years to come. They're just going to have to put this game in the garbage and look ahead to next fall. So overall, it's going to be an interesting game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the LA Rams in Super Bowl 56. Two high-powered offenses, two first overall pick quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford in 2009 and Joe Burrow 2020. And, it's going to be for as much as I don't want the Rams to win, I do think it's going to be a good game to watch. And I think it's going to be a good capper to what was a fun, an exciting 2021 NFL playoffs and overall 2021 NFL season. This season was bonkers, man. This season was wild as hell. So I'm excited. I'm excited for Super Bowl. I'm kind of excited for Super Bowl 56, even though it's not the Niners in that spot. But this matchup could be something. Now, the question, my only question is that Bengals offensive line against Aaron Donald and Von Miller, and that Rams pass rush. Oof, can they survive that? That's the question. But when we talk about that Super Bowl matchup in a future episode, we'll talk about that more in depth. So, what do you guys think about that AFC title matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs? And the Cincinnati Bengals are your AFC champions, and they could be the rulers of the AFC North and perhaps one of the perennial AFC contenders for a very long time. Man, Burrow in his early peak of his prime with Jamar Chase and that high-powered offense, and that team can just be as strong as it's been right now. I mean, win or lose this Super Bowl coming up, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, as long as, the front office, the ownership, keeps that core intact. Especially with the AFC North kind of in shambles right now. So, what do you guys think about the Cincinnati Bengals going to the Super Bowl against the LA Rams in a few days, a week and a half? Let me know how you feel about that. But that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I am your host, Dylan Lasagna. Thank you for tuning in to this fine episode number 89 of this freezing cold podcast that is always in the very cold fridge. Again, figuratively, not literally. I'd be freezing my ass off if I was in an actual very cold fridge. Follow the show on social media, on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna, and listen to the show wherever you get your podcasts, be it YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, and Google Podcasts, and keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. Very cold in the fridge with that icy cold yet spicy hot lasagna with all your takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports in there, stuffed like that Thanksgiving turkey in January or in February. What month are we in? It's 2022 and I don't even know. But anyway, just keep that lasagna very cold in that fridge with all your takes in the world of pro wrestling and sports. That's all you need to know. Anyway, everyone, until next time, peace out.